So, welcome to this information session, which you'll get plenty of opportunity to ask questions. And also feel free to ask questions on the YouTube comments or contact me directly, or even Lisa as well. Okay, so what is this rebirthing stuff all about? Well, I trained with Leonard, who was the original person that brought conscious connected breathing back to the planet in the late 1960s. I did a lot of traveling with him while he was still alive, and it was an incredible experience being with him. He had many gifts, as well as, bringing rebirthing to the world. So he was taught the technique by Maha Avatar Babaji, who resides in Herakan in the Himalayas in India. He's not in body anymore either. He's an avatar, which means that he can materialize and dematerialize his body at will. So he's a highly, highly evolved soul. And Leonard trained, so he discovered the breath himself while he was in a bathtub. And when he met Maha Avatar Babaji, Babaji said to him, "Did you like the breath that I taught you?" So he's the later incarnation of the previous old Herakan Baba, he's called. If you've ever read Autobiography of a Yogi, he's spoken about in that book. And the previous incarnation, he brought Kriya Yoga to the world, which is a very relaxed style of yoga, which focuses on breathing in it. So the breath coming to the planet is evolving. Okay, so what is different about rebirthing? Okay, first of all, breath mastery. We have three, I guess we could call them pillars: that breath mastery, body mastery, and mind mastery. So breath mastery, it's the technique and actually understanding, I guess you could call it the anatomy of a session, and all the different phases you or a client will go through when they're having a session. And a lot of breathing deviations have been documented, and they help you go through helping the client get through whatever resistance they're going through. Did they teach any of that on your training that you've had, Lisa? Breathing deviations. So no forced breath, holding breath, that kind of.
Not in my training. In my training. These are things that I've learned about outside of the breathwork training and other, in yoga trainings and things along those lines. And so I think we've shared pieces of this with our students. I still might have got some pieces of this, but not a lot of it.
Okay, fantastic.
Not in a calculated or formulated way.
Yeah. Okay. So having been a scientist originally myself, I like to have everything nicely organized. And so I've put all of the information into a format that's easily referred to when you're with a client. Okay. So body mastery is using spiritual purification with the elements. Sorry, I'll just explain. The green writing is what I will be putting in this training. Now, with spiritual purification, it is so much better when you're doing it as a group or in person. So I am looking at getting someone in the States to host maybe a weekend retreat or something, if anybody, because it is such an important part of cleansing your energy body, cleansing your thoughts, all those manic negative thoughts that come up. When you're doing spiritual purification, it helps wash it all away and bring you back into a state of peace and calm. So Leonard learnt these techniques from Babaji, when he used to go every year to Babaji's ashram and learn the ancient yogic techniques, which we can apply even in the urban environment. And honestly, so let's say you were in an in-person training, we would be getting you to do these every single day during the training, because stuff is coming up and you're getting activated and your case is coming up. And so this, as well as purification with air and doing the breathwork sessions, it just really helps you deal with the difficult stuff that's coming up. Okay, so mind mastery is all about understanding that our thoughts are creative. Now, this is our conscious thoughts, and also 95% of our thoughts are unconscious and subconscious. So we are manifesting a lot in our lives from our subconscious. And so we go through a process called the personal law and spiritual psychology, so that you understand. Now, I did a training recently with Lisa on this, but we could look at repeating that too. I've put the more essential elements to start off with, such as the breathing technique and birth trauma. So we're going to go from conception through to, let's call it the 4th trimester after birth, your first 3 months of life, because this is a highly critical period where we're forming, you know, our ideas of the world and how we are then going to respond to them. So it's really, really interesting. And this actually is related to the personal law, which is the biggest lie that we make up about ourselves. And then we create it in our reality. And so what we do is unravel it and then turn it into a positive. Okay, so then we go through childhood and school trauma. So these are all various stages of development, and looking at all the different needs that needed to be met. Now, our mums and dads aren't superhumans. So unfortunately, not all of these needs do get met. But what we can do is identify what you didn't get and then breathe on it in a session. So this work is very much tied to the theory and also doing processes during the lecture. And we will be doing guided meditations too. And this will probably get you activated and ready to then breathe on it in a session. Okay. So we also look at family patterns in this area, and, you know, all the nuances of how your mother, father, siblings behave towards you. And also something that Leonard called the parental disapproval syndrome, where habits keep getting repeated generation through generation. Okay. So the next part, unconscious death urge and physical immortality, isn't essential for right now. So I've put that in the red zone that can be looked at in the future. I might even do some, you know, video courses on that. But it is an important part of rebirthing to understand that even if you don't want to be physically and immortal, you can extend your life and you have that choice. Okay, and then we've got all the advanced techniques, past lives, water rebirthing, mirror rebirthing, eye gazing rebirthing, processing clients and how to process yourself, prosperity consciousness. Leonard, he was really quite wonderful that it wasn't just helping people with the breath. He wanted people to help change the world and even the corrupt system that we're in. So he brought to our consciousness the idea of looking at where we're lacking towards prosperity and changing that. And there's a wonderful seminar that's done where we play the money game and we have fun thinking up ideas about how to make money. Okay, so he was also very into spiritual community. And this is why I've created something called the Rebirthing Collective, which is free. However, everyone that joins it has to take charge of one meetup, and it's a 2-hour meetup every month. And they might prepare a small seminar, very small seminar. And then there's a lot of discussions about cases with clients and tips. And it's all about sharing and being a support group for each other, where no one is in control, but everybody's working together. Okay. And so Leonard also taught about enlightened politics, which is really important given the times that we're having at the moment. We really need to look at our political systems and change them for the better. Okay, now the very last thing I've got here is intuition. And you might have found that already when you're working with a client, that you connect with them. And, you know, sometimes if you are gifted, you might get an image and then just confirm it to your client and say, oh, I can see you when you were a child and this is happening. Or you might get a feeling in your body and they're feeling distress or, you know, something in that area. So I've got some little exercises that we do to help us connect with our intuition. Okay. All right. So the important thing when we're doing this course is, as you're going through the lectures, it's more likely that you'll get unconsciously activated, and then you go and breathe on it in your session. And I really like to encourage people that the lecture is on a Saturday. And if you can get a session in on the same day as we would normally do in an in-person training, you will get an awful lot more benefit out of it because you're getting activated in the session. Okay, so what is breath mastery? So mastering the technique, we go through breathing exercises that you can do, the breathing deviations, unconsciousness during a session. So there are quite a few different reasons why people go out of consciousness during a session. It's not something to worry about, but you'll be taught what to do when that happens. And it's not just anesthesia. There are other reasons people go out of consciousness. So we'll go through the energy cycle and what that is. So during the whole of a session, you go through different stages. Okay, an energy release may happen during the session when you're hitting the height of resistance and you finally break through. Your body's like, oh, let go. And then something which may not happen during the training because it's a very deep thing that might happen to you is a breathing release when you're experiencing your first breath, which more often than not was highly traumatic. And so we're releasing the energy that's stored there, letting it go. But there might be quite a bit of struggle before that happens. And yes, re-experiencing birth when you're ready for it. Because also, even a normal birth is traumatic. And these do come up during sessions when a person is ready to go there. Okay, any questions so far?
Yes, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And, about the previous page information that you were talking about, the advanced practices I'm curious about, are those specifically for in-person practices or can they
okay, some of them yes, some of them no. When it comes to water rebirthing, if you are highly proficient at taking yourself through a breathwork session on your own, there is the possibility, if you're very experienced, having someone on the video, but it does make it a lot harder when you're on the video. And so when you're doing water rebirthing, you know, you really do need someone there with you, because if you do go to a birth scenario and go unconscious, you need someone to be able to take you out of the water, or notice that you're going there, and before it even happens, get you out back to consciousness. So yes, some of the techniques can be done on video, even the eye gazing, because it's breathing whilst looking at another person, and I developed a way of doing that over the internet. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this unconsciousness during a session, is that let's say if a person in the session goes unconscious, but is that an exercise you do when the person is not breathing? Because when we're breathing, if let's say if I get unconscious, then how will I know what to do since no one is with me?
Okay, so the rebirther is there watching you and shouting at you if they see that you're not being responsive. Okay, now only for people who have never done any breath work before, what I recommend when they're having their first few sessions is to bring someone they trust into the room and have them sit with them while they're having their session, and I would guide that person. Okay, can you just shake them? Can you have a listen and tell me what the breath sounds like? So I would be guiding them if it's someone that hasn't done any breath work before.
Okay, and you mentioned about the spiritual purification at the beginning of the list. Is that different types of breathing?
Okay, so
or is it just energy work?
Okay, so you've got we'll next slide, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Kira, can I think part of the question with ISU, and I could be wrong, is with the program that we're doing, you said if we can have a breathwork session after.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, I don't know if you're holding sessions, but I know that you have people that are holding sessions. So as part of the program, can you just speak to that, to how the sessions are?
So I've got a bunch of assistants who will be facilitating sessions, and actually there is a slide further on that I'll talk a bit more about that. Okay. Another difference with rebirthing is we go into looking at our birth. So as I said before, from conception, the gestation period, 9 months in the womb, we'll look at all the different birth types. So if you were a cesarean, if you had forceps, if you were a normal birth, if you were a twin, there are lots and lots. And what we're going to do is mainly focus on your birth type and work in depth on yours, because more likely than not, you will attract clients that also have a similar birth type. And so I want to prepare you for how to work with them. And we will have less information on all the other birth types, because it's a lot of information, and it would be too overwhelming to go in depth into every single birth type. Okay, and then that should be postnatal trauma. So anything after birth, because sometimes, 30 years ago, when the baby was delivered, they'd hold the baby upside down and slap it to get them to breathe that first breath. And so that's why we're saying the first breath is so incredibly important, because, the nurses were thinking they were doing the right thing to get the baby to breathe, but it's traumatic for the baby. So we'll be looking at all those. And yes, your birth script. Now I've called it your opus magnum, which is your life's great work. And it is, even though it's traumatic, when you can turn it around and understand what your birth trauma was, you can make amazing differences in your life and how you see your reality, and life becomes a lot more easier. Okay. Now it's going backwards. Okay. All right. So even with a normal birth, I've listed a lot of things here which are traumatic. So you've got harsh lighting in the hospital environment, the temperature change and water change from water to air is quite different. The loud noises for the baby, the cord being cut and the placenta being removed. There can be complications with that. Separation from the mother, because sometimes the baby's immediately taken away, weighed, cleaned, put on scales that might be, cold. Medical interventions might be needed, such as, forceps, or the baby has a cord around the neck. The sucking of amniotic fluid out of the newborn baby's throat can quite hurt. And people who have gone through rebirthing sessions have, really struggled with that feeling of the tube in their throat. Okay, so other medical procedures may have, been done immediately after birth. And sometimes circumcision for boys happens immediately. And that is incredibly painful. So the medical team are then set up as the baby's authority figures. And we have this thing called obstetrician syndrome, which we will talk about in the training. And have you forgiven your medical team when you were delivered? So then you can have indelicate or rough handling. The medical staff, they get used to doing it and they're forgetting it's this gentle, wonderful little baby that needs to be nurtured. And, they're just doing their job because that's what they're used to doing. Okay, so then we move on to the stages of development, which is these lectures get people really into their stuff because it is important. So we've got infancy, toddlerhood, childhood, teenage years. And what we're doing is turning our wounds into becoming a magical child. I can absolutely vouch for this because the changes that doing breath work has made for me has been incredible. And I'm a lot more fun now. I'm a lot more creative. I found that my wounds really stifled me in doing things. So this all leads to becoming a healthy adult. Okay. So okay, now family patterns include the parental disapproval syndrome, which I touched on just before, and we want to turn that around to self-approval. So we don't need approval from anybody else. We find our own approval for ourselves. And then I also look at intergenerational trauma that's carried down the family line and how we, through breathwork, can stop it. Okay, so spiritual purification with the elements includes air, which is breathwork. Also pranayama also helps to purify our energy body, calm us down, and bring us into a different state of being. So then we have earth, which includes fasting for a day or longer as time goes on. And there's a stepwise way of doing this depending on what your experience has been before. We don't throw people into fasting on water if they've never done a fast before. So Earth also involves 30 minutes, at least doing 30 minutes of exercise a day, connecting with the earth, you know, being in nature absolutely nourishes us. Water would be taking 2 baths per day in a bathtub. That Leonard was taught by the yogis that this was important, and they said it when you do it before sunrise or before sunset, you don't need to stay in the water as long. But Leonard used to stay for a minimum of an hour in the bathtub in the morning and the evening. And when we do in-person trainings, this is what you would be doing. Okay, and then an hour of fire on your own every day. And this is purifying your energy body, because as things come up for you, as you might get thoughts about situations, if particularly sitting with fire, it just calms you down and it burns away the dross. Okay. So we also go through mind mastery, where we look at thought is creative, and there's a whole process called the personal law, where we find out the biggest lie that you made up about yourself. And this usually originates from between conception and, you know, infancy. Okay, and it also involves spiritual psychology. This is just a picture after I had a breathing circle once, and you know, we were all like, this is what mind mastery leads to: letting go, having fun, and being a lot more creative in our lives. Okay, so here again are the advanced rebirthing techniques. Warm water, which usually brings up birth and gestation issues. Cold water rebirthing is like really deep fear of death, and we call it the death urge. The very first time I did it, I went back to an experience, actually, no, it was the second time of, you know, could have been a past life where I was in icy water and I died from hypothermia in the water. So breathing through that was really quite a struggle, but I got through it. And as we know, with breath work, we can release all that's held within us once we just let go and allow the energy to work. Okay, and we do eye gazing, where you sit with another person or looking into the video camera and looking them straight in the eye and breathing. So mirror rebirthing, where you have to sit and look at yourself in the eye in a mirror and see how you go with that. Breathing in nature, past lives, rebirthing pregnant mothers, and how to work with babies and children. Okay, all right, now I haven't decided whether I'll swap around the first two. I think now looking at this, module 1 should be the technique first of all, then module 2 should be conception through to birth, which will lead on to the childhood stages of development. So we've got 2 lectures, 2 Saturdays that will happen for module 1 and module 2. And then we've got 3 lectures, 3 Saturdays for module 3. Okay, Saturday, 3 p.m. British Standard, it will be British summertime by then, and 10 a.m. Eastern summertime. So we have 3 hours of lectures. Okay, it is encouraged to have your session on the day, but because we're straddling 2 time, you know, a big difference in time zones, it's going to be harder for people in the UK and Europe to get their session in on the same day unless they have an evening session. Okay, then on Sunday, there was a 1 hour group mentoring session with me where you get to clarify anything that you haven't understood, ask lots of questions, and then if, you know, if there was anything that needed to be continued from the lecture, we can talk about it as well then, because you will be getting a lot of information. And it's really important that you understand what you're being taught. Okay, so during the session, during the week or at the weekend, you need to receive one session, and that's per, you know, Saturday. So you receive one session and you observe one session. Then when you're ready, it might only be from two sessions that you've observed or more. Then you can take over and be a facilitator, and the assistant will be there helping you guide the session. But it's always up to you. Whenever you're comfortable to facilitate, that's when you can start. Okay, otherwise you just continue. Usually it's after about 6 sessions with a new trainee, we then start them facilitating. Okay, and 2 hours of reading time per week. Any questions on that? Did it clarify what you wanted to know earlier?
Yeah, just to be clear, you talked about the sessions after the lectures in the same day. Is that personal on our own?
No, always the sessions are with a facilitator, a mentor. Okay, one of my team will always be with you in a session, and they'll be guiding and facilitating the session. So it makes it. Whereabouts are you, Isu, located?
Montreal, Canada.
Oh, okay, great. So you're in the the Eastern time zone. So more than likely you'll be able to get a session during that day. Lovely. Okay, it's just us in Europe. It's a bit later. So yes, it's preferable depending on and I make this flexible so that you know, if something comes up, I often get a lot of mothers who need to and need flexibility with childcare. So, you know, they have their sessions during the week or when it suits them better. But it's always better to do it on the lecture day so you can get the most out of it, because we can't really hold on to that when things come up for us. Lisa, did you want
to? So yes, I have a question about observing the session.
Yeah.
So you're receiving a session, you're observing a session. Who are you observing? Is it a triad that you're
I'm setting up a pairs. Okay, so you'll be in pairs. So let's say you two are paired, and you'll receive a session. Isu will watch it, and then Isu will receive a session and you'll watch it. And by doing this, you're watching the technique. So from observing it, you're doing that, getting the experience with the one-on-one sessions, observing it. Now, it is, as you will know yourself, it is more difficult doing sessions online because you can't always hear the client. However, one thing I can guarantee you is your intuition gets better. And so when you're observing them, you might get something, you know, you might just get a feeling. And so you'll say to them, everything okay there? Keep breathing continuously. It's really interesting how you pick up on things going on with them a lot more when you're working online like that. I don't know if you found that as a comparison with working in person.
Yes, in many ways.
Yeah.
We have had to lean into that a lot more.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes, I have a question. So we learned conscious connected breathwork, and some people have said that they experience rebirthing during their sessions. So I was wondering, what's the take? And you also before in our talk, when you mentioned that it's conscious connected breathwork, and also there are other techniques. So when you say other techniques, are you telling the breather to hold the breath or to pace?
No. So, okay, with rebirthing, we focus more on nose breathing. Okay, so when Leonard first developed conscious connected breathing, it was in a hot tub with a snorkel. And so they were breathing through the mouth. And they realized that people were going into birth experiences because they were in the hot tub. And it was too much, for them. It was real, like they were passing out and you'd have to get them out of the hot tub. So they then put them on dry, we call it dry rebirthing. And because they'd been using the snorkel, they did mouth rebirthing. So everyone that trained with Leonard in the early days does mouth rebirthing. But then when Leonard went to India and met Babaji said, breathe with your nose, eat with your mouth. So we do value mouth breathing and we do use it as well. But we start the session with the nose and we end the session with the nose. And it is incredibly important to use mouth breathing for certain situations, particularly with men, when they're not connecting with their emotions. And some women too, of course. Or if your nose is blocked and you literally cannot breathe through your nose. So we do use mouth breathing, but rebirthing is predominantly with the nose because you're getting a higher perspective on the situation. You have these, do you do any yoga?
Yes.
Yeah. Nadi. So it's your central Ida Pingala Shushumna channel. So when you're breathing through the nose, those nadis get activated. When you're breathing through the mouth, different nadis that are associated with the stomach get activated. So that's where when you are in a session and you've just gone through, let's say, an emotional incident from your childhood, you've got through it, you've released the energy and you're feeling better, and then this happened because blah blah blah, and I needed to learn whatever I needed to learn. So you do get a higher perspective on any situation when you're using that. So no, it is always conscious connected breathing. There's no other technique. I add in other techniques myself only because I've been trained in other things, and I think there are sometimes other things work faster when it's deep trauma. But this training is purely about the conscious connected breathing with the nose, understanding the breathing cycle and how to move through breathing deviations. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just a comment or recap. It really sounds like, because from my perspective, I have trauma information, and what I've learned about trauma in my studies, working with other people, and also from the breath, understanding how trauma is working through the body. And so a clarification piece is in this training, we're going to get specific information about the birth traumas and the traumas, in those first years, and then things that happen through our teens.
You'll be
you'll
be experiencing it through the meditations as well. We'll take you back to those stages of development, so that now, not with the birth trauma, that's quite different. That will spontaneously happen in a session when you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, so we're getting the information so that we understand more, and then you have specific meditations to bring us back to those traumas.
Not to the birth trauma, for the
adolescent.
not for the infancy, toddler, childhood, adolescence. Yeah, we're doing meditations for those stages of childhood development. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm clear that it's more guiding. It's having more clarity on where to go with a client, where to guide them to get to the root of some of these, instead of just relying on the breath, which is a big piece of what I'm doing now.
Once you've gone through the training and you understand all the different things that can have happened to a person, then it helps you when you're in a session to understand what they might be going through. Yeah. So it's not just they're having a hard time. Oh my gosh, what, like, I don't know how to handle this. It's like, okay, they're struggling to breathe. Okay, all right, look, you're going to be absolutely fine. Trust me. And trust is the most important thing, is having that confidence to say to someone, I get what you're going through, but trust me, you will get through it. Just keep breathing. Just keep breathing and you'll be fine. Yeah. So trust.
What I understand from your explanation is you give information and then we breathe intentionally focusing on that.
No. So what happens is you get the information and your unconscious gets activated. You might even be crying at the end of the lecture and be like, right, I'm ready to go and breathe on this and deal with whatever has come up with me. But I unlike because I'm a trained hypnotherapist, where you guide a person back to an incident, we're not doing that. We're just dealing with whatever comes up. Mm-hmm. Getting the skills and having the confidence to be able to let the person know you understand and you can help them. And the lecture material just stimulates bringing stuff up for you. And you can use it with clients as well. Yeah. Okay. Anything more? So have I totally frightened you now?
No, I mean, there's just so many thoughts swirling in my mind, lots of thoughts swirling in my mind, things that I experienced in my own training, in my own life, through my experience, and so I'm connecting a lot of dots, and no, I'm really excited about it. I'm really, really excited about it. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah. Isa, is your mother tongue French?
No, I'm Turkish.
Oh, okay. So, you see, sometimes during a session, I find it important for a person to, when I tell them to say things out loud, to say it in their mother tongue, because that's the language that was being used when it was happening, and it helps the release a lot more.